In a world.
Mate, hold up. We said we're done with the serious intros.
Who said?
Well, we did.
I don't remember that.
Well, I said it, and you're me, so, you know.
Well, I don't care. In a world.
Hey, I told you. We're keeping it light.
You do it on your own then.
Well, technically, I already am. So, anyway. Fuck yeah. Pure wild flight. Get it down ya. How good. Visit nzaerosports.com.
I get to do the next one.
Well, obviously, you moron. We both do.
Of course. I absolutely love the NZ Aerosports business model. I mean, come on. One glance at an Icarus fuck yeah sticker and you know it lines up perfectly with the fucking pilot mentality. But outside their wonderful use of colorful language and a great company vibe, there's a long list of reasons to say NZ Aerosports fuck yeah. NZ Aerosports blows me away right out of the gate as a canopy manufacturer with a bold offer. They give you 10 jumps on your brand new nylon to decide if you want to keep it, swap it out, or even return it for a refund. I mean, seriously, how incredible is that? That's like getting halfway through a prom and deciding you prefer the slightly racier date that goes down faster. Seriously, they do that. If you're not madly in love with your new canopy after 10 jumps, they'll let you swap it out for another size or model, or even get your money back. And the range of canopies they've got? Man, they've got a style canopy to fit every jumper and every situation with models you know and trust, like the Sapphire 3, the perfect choice for the beginner or intermediate canopy pilot. The Crossfire 3, when you're ready to kick it up that elliptical notch. The JFX 2, if you're looking to up your new swoop game. The Leia as the workhorse and dirtwater dirt beast. Or the Petra. The Petra cranks out crazy power and is nothing short of a record breaker. But hey, it's not always about speed either. Take the Kraken. Built as a low pack volume canopy specifically with wingsuiting in mind, she gives you all the performance you're looking for with the reliability you need that'll have you itching for that next formation, rodeo, or puffy cloud. So the equipment is top of the line kick-ass stuff as you already know, but how about the team? Well, the customer service gang is there to sort you out whenever you need them. Maddie and Beto are always there to help with Jen holding the reins. They're available for you at sales@nzaerosports.com, and they've got a kick-ass live chat tool on the website if you're wanting to hit someone up right away. These are the crew you're going to want to talk to get those custom orders in. With the stock nylon, once you know what you want, they'll have that shit on a FedEx truck as soon as the credit card machine says approved and get you in the air in no time. For your custom orders, you'll be able to get a time frame for building and shipping when you design it, so get to it. And demos. They've got demos in the US available from their partner Rock Sky Market. The whole US demo fleet is there with Sapphire 3, Crossfire 3, Kraken, JFX2, and Leia canopies in a range of sizes. They also offer student and tandem demos in the US. Bottom line, every step of the way, NZ Aerosports is there to get you what you need, and I personally couldn't be happier to be teamed up with them here on Lunatic Fringe. And now, time to get started with Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, brought to you proudly by NZ Aerosports. Fuck yeah!
Coming straight from the cockpit, it's another episode of Lunatic Fringe with the fucking pilot.
Ready, set, go! Back in the can for another edition of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, and a very smiley face on the other side of this line. Straight into it. Who the fuck are you, and what do you do?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Shirazi. I've also been called Vanessa Meyer, Vanessa Mohawk. I have some other monikers that people in the skydiving community know me by. But today I am a lecturer of neuroscience at the University of Texas in Dallas. I am in the neuroscience department, which is sort of housed within a broader department called brain and behavioral sciences. So that kind of encompasses like psychology, sociology, that kind of stuff, as well as the more biological underpinnings, which is the neuroscience side of things. So I lecture. I have a few different courses that I teach. One that's kind of a fun one, even if you're not in the field, is sex differences in brain function.
All right.
So that one gets a lot of public response, but that's one to teach. Yeah.
It's, I'll tell you what, this is my favorite thing about having started this podcast is, especially before the podcast, I always had the preconceived notion of the skydiving community because, of course, I see things through my own lens, that being someone that didn't exactly live by the rules, didn't do the school thing, didn't do the career thing, and kind of, no pun intended, fell into skydiving. But I'm constantly shocked at the level of professionals in the sport, up to and including fucking neuroscience. It's just not something, especially someone with the name Vanessa Mohawk, and I've seen many of your pictures with a proper mohawk.
Yeah.
Neuroscience would not have been the top of my list for choosing a career for you.
Yeah. It's funny because I had the full mohawk in all its glory when I got hooded. So when you get your PhD, you get hooded. They put a hood on you. And so you have to take off that little square cap and they put a hood on you. And when I took off my little square cap, my mohawk sprung up into action, and the whole arena started clapping, because it was just this unexpected sort of moment at a PhD graduation.
I bet.
Yeah, got some mileage on the mohawk.
Now, what initially spawned the mohawk?
Well, that was after I started skydiving. It was like I knew some people that had that haircut. Kevin Brown was my mohawk mentor, still is. And I just thought he was like the coolest person ever, and the mohawk was the coolest hairstyle ever. And would I ever be brave enough to sort of go for it and rock it? I mean, especially, as a woman, that's, very sort of on the fringe of what's acceptable. And I did it and I loved it. My mom always said she thought it was sort of my own psychological experiment to sort of watch people's reaction to me with that hair. And it was. And I mean, you get such a reaction from people. They want to take pictures with you, or, they want to come up and talk to you, or, then you get rude comments too of like, why would you have that stupid haircut, And so you sort of get this full gamut of human responses to your hair, which I loved.
Well, it kind of runs along the same lines as people that are mild to heavily tattooed, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, because I'd had a couple of tattoos, and of course you never hear about it. Now I've got 2 sleeves, and depending on where you're at, you get a fair amount of looks, or at least you used to, not quite so much anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you got the mohawk because of skydiving, which means you started skydiving before you were in your PhD stuff.
So I was in graduate school when I started skydiving. Actually, my roommate kind of had gotten the idea in my head. She had just finished up her degree and did it as sort of a graduation present to herself. Well, at that time, I was engaged to my first husband, and for my bachelorette party, I wanted to do something different. Like, I was living in Chicago at the time. Everybody who's getting married, they did this like, oh, let's wear feather boas and get drunk and, bar hopping. And I just done it, and I was just over it. And I wanted to do something different and exciting and scary. And so skydiving seemed to be like the perfect activity, to celebrate taking the plunge or whatever.
Sure.
And so I riled up, I think we had 10 girls that came with me to all do our first tandem at Skydive Chicago. We picked Skydive Chicago because I was living in Chicago. I grew up in Iowa on a farm in the cornfield of Iowa. And so half of my friends were coming from Iowa. So Skydive Chicago is kind of nestled right between Iowa and Chicago. Had no clue that it was like this mecca of skydiving, this incredible resort, for skydivers. No idea, right? It was just the location worked, and we picked it, and we saw they had camping. So we said, we'll make a weekend of it. We'll go, we'll skydive, we'll hang out, we'll camp there. And
oh no.
So I show up on the drop zone with 10 girls ready to party and whatever. And I made some friends
You think? You
Yeah.
think? 10 girls show up at Skydive Chicago ready to party and make skydives. I would have
Yeah.
figured you guys might have had a pretty decent time.
We had a wonderful time. People were very welcoming. Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, how was the first jump?
Oh, I mean, from the moment I got down, I was like, I gotta do that again. I mean, I loved every bit of it. They ask you, oh, what was your favorite part? All of it, everything, literally everything. The plane ride, the exit, the free fall, the canopy, everything.
Now, especially because you were in graduate school at the time, I mean, obviously, especially for neuroscience, you're talking about an extremely intense lifestyle. I mean, I can't imagine that in that field of study, there's a whole lot of time to let your hair down, so to speak, and relax. So this must have been the polar opposite to everything else you'd been doing.
Yes. Yeah. And I think maybe that's part of the reason why it was so, I was so attracted to it, because I had this very intense sort of mental challenge throughout the week. And then going off and spending my weekends at the drop zone was sort of this release of, just being in the moment and not worrying about exams and my research project and whatever, right? Just being in the moment and loving life.
Sure. Now, as you're doing this, you're getting yourself into skydiving while you're doing all these things. Do you have friends and family that are like, oh, we thought she was going to live a normal life, and now, fuck, she's doing this? Or were they just supportive of it?
My family has honestly always been wonderful and very, very supportive of all my crazy antics. I know there was a point where my mom was a little bit worried when at that point, when I had finished my PhD, I was living on the drop zone and sort of had my certificate, my PhD hanging on the wall of my drop zone trailer. And, and I think she was kind of like, oh, wow, where's this going? But always very supportive. So I'm very thankful for that.
I mean, you wouldn't have been the first person with at least a degree that hung on the trailer wall that never ever got put to use. So I suppose her fears were not completely unfounded.
No.
Well, and it's also, I mean, with skydiving, it's such an attractant and people put such passion into it. It's very easy for people that are outside of it to be worried. Oh, I wonder how much. Now, was there ever a time for you that you're like, shit, have I taken the wrong path with the PhD? I should have been a jump bum. Or did you find that perfect mix?
Yeah, I think, especially when I was first jumping, I think I was like, oh man, I wish I would have started earlier. I wish I would have gotten into this and then forget this whole school stuff and everything. But I really kind of quickly found a really nice balance. And actually for my postdoc, I found a woman who had done some research using skydivers. So she was looking at stress responsivity in skydivers. And so I contacted her and I'm like, I'm a neuroscientist, I'm a skydiver, I want to work with you. And she said, yeah, I have money for a postdoc. Why don't you come move down to New Orleans and work with me? So that was sort of a dream come true, sort of combining my two passions.
Yeah. Now, so in that, so now you're doing research into the neuroscience behind skydiving. And I've actually always been very curious about that because I've read various things throughout the years. And obviously it changes depending on what they've found out and what they know, but they link it and say that people that like extreme sports lack some of the natural stuff that other people get, which is why we seek to do things to feel normal, all of these different theories, which always kind of made me as a skydiver mad because it meant that I was more of a slave to my neurotransmitters and all that than I was to my own desires. Now that you've done that studying, is there a link to that? I mean, are we predisposed to want to do extreme activities?
Think so. I think everything is sort of on a spectrum or a continuum, right? And some people will get a huge kick out of sitting there drinking tea, reading a book, and some people get a huge kick out of throwing themselves out of an airplane. And I don't think that there's any right or wrong or healthy or unhealthy. We're just, we're a spectrum of humanity, and we're all going to fall somewhere along those lines, right?
Now, in that study, did that link to like the fear response in skydiving? Or what was that about? Because that's a big thing too, right? Is people naturally assume that people that jump out of airplanes must not be scared because they jump out of airplanes. Meanwhile, most of us who actually skydive are like, oh, I was shitting myself. So what did you guys find in regard to the link to fear response and all that stuff?
Yeah, such a good question. So the study was actually looking at first-time jumpers versus experienced jumpers. And we were looking at different metrics of stress response, one being cortisol, which is sort of your stress hormone, or measuring that in saliva. So taking a sequence of saliva samples and looking at how your cortisol levels rise and then fall in response to the skydive. And then heart rate data. So collecting some heart rate data, same idea, right? Looking at sort of pre-jump anticipation, the jump itself, and sort of the come down afterwards. And the interesting thing was, although we did see a little bit higher response in the first time jumpers, experienced jumpers still are mounting a response, right? Your HPA axis is still active. And that might be like, I'm scared either that I'm going to mess up this jump because I'm jumping with cool people, or this tandem student's sketchy, what are they going to do? Or just the fact that your body mounting that stress response, that HPA axis, it's getting your body ready for a challenge. So no matter what, it's a physical, mental challenge to be on a skydive, and your body's sort of preparing for that. It's recruiting all its resources to be ready to meet that challenge. So whether we have, one jump or we have 1,000 jumps, we're still mounting an HPA response. Now it might be a little dampened, right? Because we're sort of used to the environment. We don't have the total novelty or maybe overwhelming fear that some first time jumpers feel.
Sure.
But we definitely still mount a response.
Now, would that be what people would know as the fight or flight response?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, because
I should have said that. Yeah.
No. Please, I like that. I have to try and figure it out myself. It's fun. It's kind of one of those things that I think throughout your career, of course, the things that were initially scary become less so just because you know what's coming. But I don't think the fear ever goes away. It just transfers to a different part of it, right? Yes. I mean, you're always going to get that response. It's just something different that's going to trigger it. Did you guys do any study on how skydivers control their conscious response to that? Or
no, but that would be an awesome next step. That would be awesome.
I mean, that was always the thing. Like I started doing maybe a year ago. I started doing ice baths, and I discovered the same thing with ice baths that I did with doing a buttload of MDMA, which I also discovered with doing a bunch of skydives, which is you're in the middle of the shakes with an ice bath, or you're just twitching out of control because you've done a bunch of MDMA, and you can just literally tell yourself, stop. Just stop, and you can make it stop. It's the same thing with that fight or flight. Okay, I'm about to freak out. Stop, and you can just make it stop. And I think that that's something that skydiving absolutely taught me was you can freak out when you're on the ground and the canopy's collapsed, but you don't get to freak out now. And that's a very unique thing to extreme sports.
Yeah, definitely. That sort of being able to harness those different experiences and being able to control our emotional response to things, right? I think that's sort of what prepares us to meet other challenges in life after skydiving. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and we'll get to some of those challenges. I know that you're a very busy mom. I'm guessing those probably part of the challenges you're yes. alluding to. A whole different set of challenges. Well, yes. Back to the beginning of your skydiving career. So you go out to Skydive Chicago and you make that first jump, and clearly you decide this is something you want to do. Cut to now your PhD is hanging on the trailer. Where did you start to transition into going, I'm not just a casual jumper, but I'm gonna be a proper skydiver? Oh gosh. Well, I mean, really, when I got down for my first jump, I went and paid for that second jump. As soon as I got down from that one, I went and they had an AFF in a week kind of a thing, but you didn't have to do it in a week, but you paid for the whole thing at once. So I put that on a credit card right away, right? I'm going to get my license. Wasn't messing around with that. And really throughout grad school and even postdoc, what sort of held me back was just the finances, right? Like
Yeah.
you're poor as a grad student, you're poor as a postdoc. And I mean, I remember like having like piles of quarters being like, okay, I could do 2 jumps this weekend and then I can have $20 for groceries and like, okay, how am I going to like make this work this week? You know? So really it was only ever being held back, well, by time, right? Because I still obviously spent a lot of time in the lab and but really just held back by how much I could afford to jump.
Nice. Well, now you obviously progressed, I want to say relatively quickly. And was there tunnel time involved in this as well? Were you getting in the tunnel, or was it strictly jumping?
Yeah. So, I mean, when I started jumping, I mean, it makes me sound old now. It was like, we didn't have that many tunnels, right? Like, it was like, I remember Bonnie Grant and we started jumping together and we took a trip out to Colorado to do our first tunnel camp with Mickey Nuttall and the old Sky Venture tunnel. And that was sort of crazy exciting. And I think we did. I could really not afford that much. I think I did 45 minutes or, not even an hour for flying all the way out there. Anyway, when I transitioned out of academia and started working in industry and really making decent money here in Dallas, I got to fly a lot more in the tunnel. And that's where I feel like my skills really progressed because I had the funds to do so.
For sure. Now, I mean, there really only seems to be 2 ways to do it in skydiving: is either you work in the industry or you work in an industry that allows you to afford it. Because let's face it, this is not a poor man's sport.
Right.
I mean, it's feast or famine if you're working in the sport, and if you're outside the sport, you better make a good income. Because I mean, shit, a good rig nowadays is what, $4,000 or $5,000?
Oh yeah, I probably more than that, double, right? If you get everything new and
I was in my first rig for I think $2,000 with everything. So
oh dang, yeah.
Oh yeah, it was a few years ago. So did you find it difficult balancing such a professional career? I mean, neuroscience is no joke. And now you're jumping out of airplanes for entertainment as well. Was there ever any backlash between the two, or any difficulties between being in that profession and going and spending your weekends jumping out of airplanes?
Oh gosh. Well, I think I did a pretty good job of trying to like balance the two. I do remember there was a jumper, Pete Eng, Skydive Chicago, and he was a professor of physics. And when he realized that I was a graduate student, he looked at me dead in the eyes and goes, "Why aren't you in the lab?" And I was like, "Oh, I'm like, oh yeah, I should be in the lab." I guess being in Chicago sort of helped because it's seasonal. So during the jumping season, I would sort of be out there every weekend, but then during the winters, I was, in the lab in the weekends, right? And so I kind of made up for it during the winter times and then had my fun during the summertime.
Fair enough.
And I was fortunate because I worked at Manifest at Skydive Chicago, which helped me to, I just worked for jumps, so that was like, I could get some money on my account so I'd be able to afford to jump. So it was like, I would work all day at Manifest, get off, maybe make sunset load, and it would
nice.
Be like,
Neuropsychology is a profession, and psychology is a minor working manifest, because you've got to be able to read people real well.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's skydiving in general. Well, so when did you start jumping, by the way? What year?
2010.
Okay, so I mean, a few years ago now. I mean, you've been at it for a while, but you've gone from, starting there and having to kind of, I'd say, jump into it relatively easily because you had school and the career going and everything, to now being part of all kinds of stuff between teams and records. And I mean, where did it really ramp up? Because I mean, clearly you've got the skills to perform.
Oh, well, that's nice of you to say, but I think it's mostly just, that I love jumping and that, I like showing up. I like being there. I like doing the things, right? I have a love and a passion for it. And so people sort of respond to that, right? But definitely when I moved to Dallas, I moved to Dallas in 2015. And that's where it sort of really ramped up. That was when I've been on a few belly 4-way FS teams, one was all female team, and we got to go to the World Cup, which was super fun. We weren't medaling at the cup, but just being there.
Oh yeah,
being there was cool.
Oh yeah.
And then really, my free flying really took off here because I was able to afford the tunnel time to, learn to fly vertically, and then learning about Project 19, the women's world record, and sort of setting my sights on that as a big goal. And I have to get good enough to be part of that because it's this amazing thing and I can't let it happen without being part of it.
Sure. Now, was there an attraction to big wave stuff prior to that, or was it specifically because of the cause that Project 19 represented?
It was the cause that it represented. I think, big wave stuff kind of was intriguing just because all the really good people were doing it. So there's sort of that, like, oh, all the cool kids are there. Like, but it was really the whole idea behind Project 19, celebrating the 19th Amendment was so cool. And just the fact that it was all women. I'm, total feminist. I love badass ladies, and the idea of getting to hang out with 100 other badass ladies. I was like,
sure.
Yes.
Well, and you've got, especially without touching onto politics too much, it's very poignant these days to be involved in a project like Project 19 or the Highlight Skydiving team now, in an era where the United States is struggling so much with trying not to go backwards at full speed. So it's got to be even more important for somebody like you, if as a feminist wanting to push it, that it's happening now.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, man, and we think back, 100 years ago, and I've always been such a big fan of the suffrage movement. In fifth grade, I was Elizabeth Cady Stanton in the school musical. And ever since then, I've been, sort of obsessed with the suffrage movement and what these women went through to, and how much work and almost 100 years of work until they got the right to vote. Right.
Sure.
And how, what a process it was and how many people had to come together. It's super, super inspiring. And so hopefully we can sort of,
well, it's insane. It's insane that the process isn't over.
Yes.
Right. I mean, it's the same thing with like gay rights in the United States. I can't understand that it's even a topic of conversation anymore, but women's rights, how can this even be something that we're discussing? And why should it be necessary for a sport to have to try and highlight what the rest of the country should just absolutely be doing, for fuck's sake? Right. We're skydivers, for fuck's sake. We're not supposed to be the responsible adults in the room. That's not supposed to be us. So in that, what type of projects have you been involved with Project 19, and what other stuff have you done, either competition wise or in that venue?
Yeah, so I, just always try to be as supportive as I can of anyone, but, especially of women in our sport. Right now, I'm helping to organize the Skydive Spaceland Sis Boogie, and just try to cultivate sort of an environment where women are welcome on the drop zone. They're excited to come to the drop zone, right? And they have people to jump with, and they have, buddies and support network, so that it's so easy, I think, for anyone, but especially for women, to get pulled away from the sport, right? Like you get married or you have babies or you have this. And, and I don't think that society is as, they're not as accepting of women doing extreme things.
Sure.
And so it's even harder just from a social perspective, the way that people view you or what you're expected to sort of act or behave. And maybe it's okay when you're younger, but then definitely, if you're, older and you're married and you have kids, like you're not supposed to sort of keep doing these crazy things.
Sure.
So it's hard for women. I think it's hard for women to stay in the sport. And we see that, kind of this leaky pipeline where, I don't know the exact statistics, but I think, we're pretty equal when it comes to like who shows up for a tandem, right? And then it gets less when you look at how many, women get their license, and less on up the chain to examiners and stuff and,
sure,
and judges and whatever.
Well, it's kind of funny because coming from first a tandem instructor, an AFF instructor, and then a jump pilot, depending on the drop zone that I was working on, I would actually see at least 50-50 women, sometimes substantially more. And as a tandem instructor, I will be the first one to say that women almost always handle that first jump better than men. They handle the fear response, and I don't know if that's ever been part of one of your studies, but women handle fear response dramatically better than men. And I think that a big part of that is because as guys, especially in the States, we're raised that fear is unattractive and you're not supposed to ever show it. And so you're not supposed to be scared. So when a man comes face to face with real fear, we have no fucking clue how to handle it because the response has been programmed out of us. No, you're not allowed to feel that. So women have always handled it better. So as I got deeper and deeper into the sport, I always found it surprising that there weren't more women in skydiving. But I was also lucky in that, like, Paris Valley was my home turbine drop zone. I jumped in Las Vegas, but we'd go to Paris for the big planes, and there were shitloads of badass women jumping even in the late 90s. So I was always exposed to these badass female skydivers all the way through my career. And honestly, through, blindness and just not paying attention, it never even dawned on me that women were such a small percentage and had as many problems as they did in the sport. Do you see that changing? Because you're watching it happen.
Yeah, and starting at Skydive Chicago, again, I just feel like so lucky because it was such a supportive environment. You did have these like badass ladies, and people to look up to, and everyone was so wonderful that it was any, resistance I felt was outside of the sport, not within the sport, right? In the sport, people were awesome and amazing and super supportive. And that's, again, I credit that to starting at Skydive Chicago and sort of the environment. The social cultural environment that they've cultivated there is amazing. And any resistance that I felt was from the outside world, the WFO crowd.
Well, and you go to places like Skydive Chicago or any of the major drop zones are so multicultural and from all over. It's from everywhere, from all over the world. So you don't have to ever travel outside the United States to travel the world if you're a jumper, because you're going to be jumping with people from everywhere at a place like Skydive Chicago. So that's probably part of it as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I remember, so my second tandem was during Summerfest, right? What luck. And we were meeting all these people, like, gosh, people from Australia and people from Europe. And I'm like, sport is awesome. Like, this is crazy. Exactly what you're saying. I was meeting people from all over the world, right? And it was like, just really opened my eyes to what the possibilities were with the sport.
Well, and the topic has come up many, many, many times on the podcast that the best part about skydiving is the community. Because for me, I'm an average jumper, always have been, always will be, and I'm perfectly fine with that. But the community is just incredible. It's a rock star community. I've got a couch on every continent and probably in every city in the world, just because I've spent so many years making friends with all these amazing people around the world. And you do make friendships really quickly and really close friendships in this sport. So it really is, the community is incredible. And I would imagine even more tightly so with women in the sport, because it is such a small subset of the community.
Oh, yeah. And oh, man, when I moved to Dallas, I didn't know, I moved here for a job. I didn't know anyone here. I hadn't really even been here. I think I had been here once for a skydiving event. And, moving to a new place, you're sort of trying to find your footing, and showing up to the drop zone as a jumper, all of a sudden you have friends, right? You have a community, and the women here were amazing. And we used to do this like wine and cheese night. Some of the girls, we would get together and drink wine and eat cheese and, laugh and whatever. And they immediately sort of invited me into that group, and I was a part of it, right? I immediately had a social group. I had friends. I met my now husband at the drop zone too, right? So it's like you said, you immediately have this, no matter what city you go to, you have this community of people who have your back.
Yeah. Oh, it's incredible. I've bumped into, back when still wearing closing pins was a very popular thing. I had bumped into somebody wearing a closing pin during travels, and I forget where I was. It was somewhere in Europe, and someone saw my closing pin, and it was a skydiver, and went out of their way to work through the crowd to get to me to introduce themselves. And that's when all right, this is a cool fucking group of people. There really is. Now, you're a mom. When you have more than one child or just one?
Two boys. Yep.
So what are their ages?
So one's 2 and the other one's 9 months. So they're both little.
Busy. So you don't have a whole lot of time.
Oh, there's never a dull moment around here. Yes.
So now what has motherhood done to your skydiving career? Has it changed it other than the lack of time? Do you look at skydiving in a different way now that you're a parent of 2?
Yeah, I mean, it's harder now, right? It's harder just in terms of time, right? Even and in terms of expense, right? If I want to go to the drop zone, now I got to pay for the nanny for all day, right? So it at least doubles the cost of anything that I want to do ever.
Right.
So it's the cost and the time. I still have my passion for jumping, and I think that that's the most important thing. I don't get to jump or fly in the tunnel as much as I was before. Obviously, like things are different now, but anytime I do, like I still relish in that. And I think it's so important to like stay connected to our passions and our hobbies and what makes us happy and what makes us tick. And it's so easy as a mom, I'm sure of any age, but definitely as a mom of young kids, it's so much easier to just be like, I'll just stay home on a Saturday. Like it's just easier than trying to like prep everything and get the childcare and just to get out to the drop zone and hope for good weather and So it takes more effort and more energy. But it's so important because, when I come back after a day of jumping or I'm lucky because our tunnel, they do have some like league night tunnel events. When I get home from that stuff, man, I'm energized, I'm happy.
Nice.
I'm stoked. I'm like, I'm charged up. And I think that's important,
Extremely.
for moms to do because it's so easy to lose yourself. So easy to lose your identity into, I am just this caregiver for these little humans, right?
Sure. Well, I think, honestly, in discussing it, what an amazing idea would be for both tunnels and drop zones, because our generation, your generation is a little bit younger than mine, but our generation of skydivers have kids of a younger age. Why aren't drop zones getting daycares together? Come on, guys.
Oh, man.
Could you imagine a drop zone with a daycare day or a tunnel with a daycare room and somebody to take care of the kids while mom and dad shred in the tunnel? Come on. Right? Now,
some next level stuff.
Right. Now, as your kids get older, do you envision them doing the personal packing weight type of thing and hanging out at the drop zone while mom's out jumping?
No, I don't. I think, and that's cool if people are, kids on the drop zone. I love it. Nothing against that. I want it to be like my thing, right?
Nice.
Like that's my spa day, right? Like you don't take your kids to go get a massage or get your nails done, right? You leave them at home so you can have your time.
Right.
So no, I mean, I think that my oldest would love it. He loves airplanes. He's obsessed with anything airplane. He would love to come out, for a little bit and watch, but, no, I want it to be my time.
Now, looking down the road, if either of them decide that they want to take up the sport for themselves, what's your approach to that going to be?
Yeah, it's a good point. My husband was like laughing. He's like, "Oh, when the kids get older, all your tunnel money goes, they get, get a fly in the tunnel." I'm like, "No way, that's my tunnel money. That's my tunnel time." No, I mean, of course, like I imagine. So, my husband's a pilot, like you, right?
Yeah.
Awesome people. And I think that they're gonna be involved in aviation in some way, whether that's just having their private pilot license, having their A license skydiving. I'm sure they'll be involved in aviation in some small way, and maybe
Sure.
they'll go off and do something completely different, but I'm sure they'll have some small connection to aviation world.
Well, and like a lot of kids, they tend to push back on what mom and dad like, so they may go 180 degrees the other direction. You never know. I remember when my daughter got old enough that the idea that she might want to jump started creeping into my head. It was a very strange thing for me to try and process, because although I was very active in the sport and consider skydiving safe enough, I don't know that I thought it was safe enough for my daughter, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, because it's still fucking dangerous. And then the big joke, of course, is taking my then teenage daughter onto a drop zone. Yeah, I was a young guy on the drop zone, and I know what it's like when the attractive girl comes on the drop zone for the first time. And
Like,
Luckily, though, the skydiving world is changing a lot, and the shit that used to go even unnoticed before is now not cool on the drop zone, which is a nice thing.
yeah,
It's a nice thing. But yeah, I never knew how I'd feel about her making a jump, and she's now made a couple of skydives, and she liked it, but it's not her thing. So I'm like, oh, thank goodness. But you never know. So who knows?
No,
So
I
what do
agree with you. I think that they're gonna rebel and they're gonna be like into knitting or something. I don't know, like something just
They'll take
polar
up golf.
opposite, right?
They'll take up golf.
Yeah, it's gonna be something like that, I'm sure.
So what's next on the horizon? Do you have any specific goals in regard to skydiving coming up?
Well, this season, my main thing is I'm helping organize that Sis Boogie that's going to be coming up in a couple months. I'll be organizing at the big Revolution Boogie that we do in Dallas. But really my main goal now is to just like stay connected, as much as I can. I don't have the bandwidth to sort of like put things together. So if someone is putting together a tunnel night or they're putting together, a cool Saturday at the drop zone, like I'll get out there and I'll, be a participant, but I really don't have the bandwidth to do like much more than that. So right now it's my main goal is to just stay connected to my passion as much as I can. And there'll come a time when the boys grow up and, mom's lame, they don't want to hang out with me anymore. And then I'll have plenty of time to be back at the drop zone,
I love that lame mom is the mom that goes out to go try and do a 150 way head down or some shit like that. I mean, not exactly the version of a lame mom most people would think of. I mean, it's not like you're not busy enough between balancing a profession in neuroscience, a mother of two very young children, and being a skydiver. So what the fuck's your excuse? Come on.
Making it all happen as much as humanly possible.
So for those that are listening and they want to find out about the Sis Boogie, they want to find out about your organizing, they want to follow you or just see when you're going to be at the drop zone so they can come out and make a jump. Do you have a social media presence that they can follow you on?
Yeah, I'm really, I guess old school. I'm Facebook, and I'm not really on anything else, and all the cool kids are on TikTok and stuff these days. I'm just, I'm on Facebook. So find me on Facebook.
Nice. Does the Mohawk make an appearance anymore?
Well, so I did have the Mohawk. I did shave it back into the Mohawk for Christmas. So maybe I'll do that. I'll post up my Christmas hawk for everyone's enjoyment.
It's funny because we've actually never spoken before, and I don't even know. You're probably the same as me. I have lots of friends on Facebook that I follow their exploits, but we've never spoken. We've never met. And I've always followed your posts because your posts are so cheerful. I've never seen a negative post. It's always this fun thing or that fun thing with this huge smile and generally a colorful mohawk. And I forget what I saw recently posted and I'm like, oh, I've got to get her on the show. She's just got a great energy, at least on the posts. And it's very nice to see that your energy face to face matches up to everything I've seen on the posts.
Oh, well, thank you. I will say, I feel like with skydivers, we're such an accepting group as long as you're genuine, right? Yeah. And so I feel like when people maybe first meet me, they think I'm sort of like a lot or they think it's like fake or something. I don't know. But the more they get to know me, even if I sort of am too much for them at first, they realize, but that's just who she is, right? Yeah. Like that's just like her genuine nature. And once people sort of realize that you're genuine, I think that they can connect with you easier.
Oh, no, absolutely. 100%. I mean, it's the people that are putting on airs and trying to clearly paint themselves in one way that they're the ones you don't want anything to do with. But if you're yourself, it goes a whole long way, especially in skydiving, because we can smell bullshit from a mile away.
Yeah. And we're so accepting of everyone, right? As long as like you're just be yourself, right? If you're an asshole, well, that's just who he is. That's fine. It's cool.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I actually had a friend tell me once that I'm the nicest asshole he'd ever met, which for anybody outside of skydiving might be an insult, but I thought that was the greatest fucking thing ever. I'm like, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right. Well, I cannot thank you enough for taking time out of an insanely busy schedule. I know you literally just got out of the pool with the kids to come and do this chat. So thank you so much. I want everybody to check out the stuff that you've got going on, especially with the Sis Boogie coming up. And when is it coming up? What
it's
is it?
June 3rd and 4th.
Nice. June 3rd and 4th. So they need to get out for that and then follow everything else that you got going on. And all the best of luck with the kids and work and everything. And thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity. It's been so much fun.
You take care. And there you have it. Another episode of Lunatic Fringe Into the Void, brought to you as always by, and say it with me, fuck yeah, NZ Aerosports. Head to nzaerosports.com. By Pussfoot. That's right, head to pussfoot.com, the extreme sports collective, and check out everything they've got to offer. By summitparachutesystems.com. Jarrett Martin and the family cranking out amazing pilot rigs, as well as incredible rigging courses. And now joining the Lunatic team, it's the one and only Tony Suits. You know him, you love him. Head to tonysuit.com. Check out all the amazing standards, as well as the new incredible signature line they've got going on. And as for us, the Lunatic Fringe is now on YouTube. That's right, you're going to have the chance to put faces to the audio by heading to youtube.com and looking up the Lunatic Fringe podcast. It's easy. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, check out all the amazing videos from the previous guests that we've had, as well as new and upcoming interviews on video. As always, I am the fucking pilot. Head to thefuckingpilot.net or theprincesspilot.com. Thanks for joining. We'll see you next time around. Well, holy shit, I actually managed to do it. After procrastinating for ages, I finally managed to produce an audiobook version of the Lunatic Fringe book. It's currently available on all Amazon sites, audible.com, and shortly on iTunes. And if you're the page-turning type, it's also, of course, still available in Kindle form, paperback, and hardback on Amazon. 10 hours and 10 years worth of Blue Skies Magazine's articles, all available to you right fucking now, including a few author's notes and even an apology or two. Enjoy.